Okay, hi Greg, how are you?
Hi, Douglas. Good. I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing very well, thank you. Thank you for coming on the show.
Of course. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I got to ask about the money right behind you. What is that? Is that 1,000 or a 10? Or,
It's actually a $5 reserve note that my dad gave me. He was in banking and international banking, and so yeah, just a cool gift that my dad gave to me a long time ago, and just decided to hang it up.
see, I'm a big fan of old money. Okay, so that's a $5 note. What
Yeah.
year is that from?
Oof. That I don't know. I would probably say at least 100, 150 years old, but yeah, that's a good question. I don't know, honestly.
Is it Lincoln? I mean, I can't quite make out who's.
Yeah, I believe it is Lincoln.
Okay, well, it's very neat. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of
Okay,
cool.
so you're here to promote a book and you're also a real estate. Are you a real estate investor or a real estate agent or what?
So actually both, which we can kind of
Both.
get into. More of a real estate investor these days, but I actually started off as an investor, became a realtor along the way, and now I kind of do both, but more focused on real estate investing at this point.
So if you buy and sell properties that you own, you get your own commission.
I do, yeah. I've done that quite a few times, and it's a nice little bonus, so that
Yeah,
kind of
that
helps.
works. Yeah. Okay. So how did you get involved in that? Why don't you tell us a little bit of your backstory?
Sure. So I got involved in real estate as a real estate investor in 2012. I did that like most people. I just bought a single family home, and then I pretty much outgrew it because I was getting a dog at the time, and the little townhouse that I had didn't really have much of a backyard. So decided to buy a single family home with a backyard so I can put in a doggy door, and then basically turned that first townhouse into a rental. So I became a landlord. I was writing leases. Didn't really know what I was doing, but I made it through. So that was my intro to real estate investing, and that kind of kicked off my journey on that side. And then probably about 3 years later in 2015, I really wasn't happy with my job. It was a W-2 cubicle job, wasn't making a lot of money, and just wasn't really being fulfilled. So I was talking to a buddy of mine, and we were just kind of talking candidly, and he said, "Well, why don't you become a real estate agent? You can, learn about the industry and help people out, and really just learn the back end of contracts and relationships." And so with a little planning, that's what I did. And I've been doing that for the last 5 years or so. And kind of like I said, I'm trying to switch a little bit more into the real estate investing just because that's where my passion lies. But I'll still help people buy and sell residential real estate here in Phoenix, all day long, just because I still like that too. It's just real estate investing is really where my passion lies these days.
So how many properties have you got now?
On the investing side, we have four single families, and then we've invested passively in three or four larger syndication deals. So, and I can kind of talk about that as well, active versus passive, and kind of see where the conversation goes.
Yeah, I'm not even sure what that means in real estate. So why don't you explain that concept?
Sure. So like owning a single family home, that's more active because, my name is on the mortgage. If you're self-managing, which I don't do that anymore, but there's basically a lot more on your plate when you're actively putting a deal together, whether it's a single family home or you're buying a $10 million apartment building. That's, active because you're getting your hands dirty and you're more responsible and liable. On the passive side, it's basically you find a deal and a person that you trust, you vet them out, you understand that they're a valuable operator, and then you write a check to them. Let's say they're raising $1 million, and you write a check for $50,000. You might get 3% ownership or 5% ownership, whatever those numbers work out to be, but you're not responsible for the mortgage, for the landscaping, for the tenants and the toilets. You're basically just along for the ride, and you're putting your trust in that syndicator or that operator. So two different worlds. I kind of like living in both worlds because why choose one when you can choose both? And I like being passive because it's easy and the money comes to you in your bank account every month. On the active side, it's fun putting the deal together and talking to other investors and getting your hands dirty. So I enjoy both sides.
Okay, let's go back to the passive again, because I still don't, a little unclear. So you put in $50,000 and you give it to somebody and they
Hmm.
buy a property for whatever it is, for whatever the price is. How do you get
Right.
money every month?
So it's basically in the operating agreement and the contracts that they put together. So on a typical deal, I'll just throw out some numbers. If on $1 million property, if I put in $50,000, I would have, let's say, for example, 5% ownership of that property. So in 3 years or 5 years, say that $1 million property doubles in value, then my 5% turns into 10% because it doubled in value. And then all along the way, there is a monthly or quarterly distribution. It's basically called the cash on cash return. So if I put in $50,000 and in the paperwork, let's say they're projecting 10% cash on cash, that's basically 5 grand a year is what they're projecting to pay me. Now, obviously, without any investment, they can't guarantee that. If they say guarantee, it's a big red flag because no investment's guaranteed. But that's the way you would collect money either monthly or quarterly, depending on how they have it set up. Hopefully that answers your question, gives you a little more clarity.
Well, almost. Where does that money come from? Is it from rent?
Yeah, so it would be from the rental and the operation of the property. And, with a lot of multifamily properties, let's say that $1 million property, you can raise rents, you can go into those units and maybe, renovate them, bring them up to market rent. And then that creates your monthly cash flow, which gets distributed to the passive investors and the active investors based on how the contract is laid out.
Okay, so typically passive investing properties would be commercial.
Yeah, you can do them for commercial. You can also do, you can do them for residential. It really just depends on how the numbers shake out. But yeah, typically it's for commercial and for larger buildings that, if you're buying a $10 million building, you need to come up with that down payment of 25%. I know personally, I don't have that in the bank. So that's when, you reach out to other investors and kind of pool other people's money together to, buy that bigger building and really move the needle.
What happens if it goes into foreclosure?
Good question, because that can definitely happen. That's ramifications of investing in anything. So if it does go into foreclosure, then it would just depend on how the contract is laid out. But usually on bigger apartment and investments like that, there's usually a break even of, let's say, if the property is rented 100%, obviously there's no problem of going into foreclosure because the rents are going to be coming in. Usually investors and general partners who put together these kind of deals, they'll reference a break-even point. So they'll say, at 70%, we'll break even. So at 70%, we're bringing in exactly the amount of money that we're putting out. That's when our basically our monthly distributions or quarterly distributions would be at zero. If it goes below that, then you're in trouble. That's when you're talking, foreclosure or kind of going down that road. And luckily, I haven't been down that road yet on one of these deals or in any deal, honestly. But it's a good question to ask the operator and the person who's putting together that deal, what that looks like and if that does happen.
So if the bank takes over the property, the bank would sell the property and then you would be in line to get your money back?
Yeah, essentially as a limited partner, that is part of the downside because you are limited to what you can do, the control that you have in the deal. So there are, just like any investment, there's pros and cons to both sides, being active, being passive, and you really just have to understand the risks going in and what your tolerance is, and how much money you do have available. I always tell my investors who I'm trying to partner with, I don't want your last $50,000. If it's the last money you have in the bank, I want you to feel secure in your investment with us. So you really do have to feel comfortable, writing that check. And I definitely don't want to take your last 50,000 or whatever that number is, just for peace of mind's sake on my side and for their side as well.
Yeah, because there's always a pecking order when the bank takes over. The first mortgage gets paid first, the second mortgage would get paid second, and then it kind of goes down the list, right?
Right, exactly. And as a limited partner, you're not on that mortgage for that $1 million property. The general partners, the people who put together that deal, they're on that mortgage. So if it does go into foreclosure, there wouldn't be any legal, at least I believe, on the legal side, nothing could come to me as a limited partner because I'm basically limited in the upside and limited in the downside. It would be more on the people who put together the deal. That's more their mortgage that they're personally responsible for. So if it did get foreclosed on, it kind of kind of tumbles on them a little bit more. Obviously, it would just be my money that I would be out, but there wouldn't be any legal ramifications, at least from my understanding with talking to SEC attorneys and all that fun stuff.
So you couldn't sue them if
I
it
don't
went to
believe
that?
so.
Okay.
Yeah, I think as part of being the limited partner is you do have limited
You
ability.
assume the risk. Yeah.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay. All right. So you're here to promote a book. Your book is called Successful Habits of Super Achievers.
Hmm.
Why don't you tell us a little about the book?
Yeah, so the book, I have it right here. I'll just give it a quick screenshot. Yeah, Success
Yep.
Habits of Super Achievers. And yeah, it's a really cool book. It's the first book that I ever authored, and I'd say co-author because there's about 80 plus authors in the book. And basically what it breaks down to is every author wrote one chapter about, their success habits, what, they've gone through to, make themselves successful, whether it's, habits or patterns in their life. And a lot of great stories in the book. And I can show you here, there's not just people like myself, but even you have Darren Hardy, Les Brown, Brian Tracy are in the book. Just a lot of great celebrity authorities. So personally, for me, it's really cool just to be associated with a lot of the men and women in this book. So it was just a great experience, writing one chapter because I think everybody, does want to write a book at one point or another. And actually, last summer I sat down and I think I wrote about 8 or 9 chapters of a book, real estate related, and I just didn't feel like it was going anywhere, or I didn't feel like it really had legs. But when this opportunity came up to, hey, you just write a chapter and you're going to be in a book with 80 other authors, I said, all right, I can wrap my head around that, and I can really, take that down pretty easily. And it was just a fun process, and yeah, very very happy and grateful to be in the book. And yeah, it's been selling like gangbusters on Amazon, number one in over 30 categories. So
Oh, great.
can't really complain so far.
Well, that's super. Give us a couple of the habits of these super achievers. Did you find any ones that they all had or most of them had?
Yeah, good question. So I think the common theme that I ran across was just consistency. I know it's not a sexy answer; it's kind of boring, but if you do something every day, you're going to get better at it, and it's just going to become ingrained in your brain of, hey, this is something I have to do. Whether it's creating a good habit or maybe eliminating a bad habit, because we both we all have both of those sides of habits, I'm sure. So yeah, consistency is something that I read pretty much across a lot of the chapters, and then just speaking for myself, what I really did was I created a miracle, or I used the Miracle Morning by Hal Elrod, and I created a morning routine, and I stuck with it. And even in my chapter, I wrote, I tried the Miracle Morning and I failed, and then I tried a second time and I failed, and I tried the third time and I finally got it. It was just something clicked, the timing was right, and then from there the consistency just kicked in. So now I do my morning routine. Happily I can say I'm down 30 pounds since January, and just it's created a lot of other positive habits in my life, personal life, my business, and I'm just a checklist guy to begin with, so it's pretty easy for me to create a spreadsheet and then just check everything off as I go day in and day out. So just consistency is probably that one habit that is running throughout the book.
So you said Miracle Morning. This was something about regarding weight loss. You were trying to lose weight.
No, so actually, The Miracle Morning was a book by Hal Elrod, and he basically just created a platform around, waking up early and giving yourself whatever the amount of time that you need in the morning, whether it's a half hour to, meditate, exercise, just kind of get your head right before your day starts.
Oh, I see. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well, you said something about weight loss in there. So
Oh yeah,
you
that was
said,
just one of the benefits that I achieved this year, and yeah, just down 30 pounds since the beginning of the year, and that was just one of the results from doing the morning routine and creating my success habits.
okay. So did you find any bad habits that were consistent with these people?
That's a good question. There are some bad habits definitely in the book across the chapters. One thing that I really noticed was, at least I could not relate to it, but a lot of people in the book, they came from rougher backgrounds. They might have had a tough childhood, or alcoholic parents or abusive parents, that kind of thing. So that kind of shows up in the book I wouldn't say every chapter because, like I said myself, I didn't experience any of that. But that was a consistent theme that I ran across of, they might have gotten into drugs when they were in their teenage years, which is pretty common. But then, you read their story and then they turn into a successful real estate investor or business owner or, coach. So that's one thing that I really, really took from the stories because I could not relate to that. One of the stories in the book was a gentleman, he grew up in Compton, and as a child, he had a gun pointed to his head at one point. And then, he turned himself into a successful real estate investor, but just wrapping my head around those circumstances and situations, I couldn't because I couldn't even imagine being in that situation as a kid, let alone just as an adult or anybody. So it was just really eye-opening to see where a lot of these authors came from and what they overcame to really become successful in their own worlds.
Yeah, it's true. And I know that I've talked to other people who have said there are some real consistencies between like the super rich, the super successful. They all have a certain, and then there's quite a few different examples, but there is definitely commonalities between them, personality types and how they organize themselves, things like that. Actually, I'll give you one that I remember. He said that this was a really super successful rich guy. He said, when I have a meeting with people, whatever the business issue is, he said, if I'm the smartest person in that room, I'm in the wrong room. And what he meant was that he always wanted to surround himself with people who knew more than he did so he could learn,
Right.
And that was his point. They're all avid learners, avid readers. They want to absorb as much knowledge as they possibly can.
Right. Yeah, I've definitely heard that as well. And I love that because I love walking into a room, like you said, where there's people that have achieved more or smarter or just have different tactics. So yeah, learning is just, it's a continuation every day. So yeah, I couldn't agree with that statement anymore.
All right. Well, Greg, we got to wrap this up. Unfortunately, we are out of time. You want to hold up your book again?
Sure.
Just give us another shot of it. Okay. Success Habits of the Super Achievers. And okay, great. And do you have a website that you want to give out?
Yeah, so people can find me at sevenfigurecapital.com, and it's just all spelled out. And the best email for me is simply greg@sevenfigurecapital.com.
Okay, super. Thanks for coming on the show, Greg. Best of luck with the book. It sounds like it's doing well. I hope that continues for you.